Hello, good people of YouTube, Mountbatten here, and today we are taking a look back at what is, in my opinion, one of the most miserable premium ships to play, and that is the Tier 8 premium French battleship, the Gascon. Now, the Gascon is a kind of a historical ship. The Gascon and the Clemenceau, they were planned, and the French Navy was trying to lay them down in order to counteract the Bismarck and the Tirpitz. And with the Gascon and the Clemenceau, which I believe one of the new French battle cruisers that we're getting is named that, if I am remembering correctly. But anyway, these were Richelieu class variants, so this is technically a Richelieu class, but obviously with some big changes. And again, the big change being the very obvious, turret number 2 is now behind the superstructure rather than both turrets being in front of the superstructure. Along with a reconfiguration of the secondaries. If you notice, the larger, I believe, 152mm secondaries, they are all on the center line and not stacked in the rear like the Richelieu class. And she has less secondaries than the Richelieu as well, with the 100mm secondaries. And also less AA, and we'll get into all of that very, very soon. So this ship is actually, I believe, 4 years old right now. She was released in March of 2018. I'm not exactly sure when in March, but we just had the patch for March, so I believe it's safe to say that she is a solid 4 years old in the game at this moment. So this ship was released when I was starting to really get into doing the YouTube channel thing, essentially full-time as a second job. So it's interesting seeing a ship that I reviewed back in the day that has received pretty much no changes. The only changes that have been made to the Gascon is that her secondary range got increased with the Commander rework. Other than that, the ship is exactly the same as it was 4 years ago, which will of course highlight some problems with the ship. And she is still currently available to purchase for the normal price of a Tier 8 premium. I believe it's around $38 US at the moment. I'm telling you up here at the front, I would not recommend you really buy this ship unless you're a big fan of the Richelieu class and you really want to play the planned variant of the Richelieu class that the French Navy was planning before the war broke out. Other than that, there's no real big reason to get this ship. I'm just telling you up here at the front. But let's take a look at the ship and see what makes her so miserable. And I'm telling you up here at the front too, what does make her so miserable is that she's so close to being a very good battleship. She is like literally this close. Well, you can't see me holding it in my hands, but like 4 pixels away from being a really freaking good battleship. But let's take a look at her. So her armor is... it's French armor. It's completely coated in 32. Everything's 32. The foredeck, the middeck, the side plating, it's all 32, which is, of course, a normal French thing. It does lead you to some of those French armor moments, if you will, where when you expect to do like a full pin, you just get like either a torpedo protection hit or an overpin, or when you expect to get an overpin, you somehow manage to get a full pin. It's that wonderful French baguette space armor. But if you do rip away the extremities, her citadel is actually, of course, very well protected. She has a turtleback citadel, which is very, very, very nice. And even so, her citadel is just a little bit above the waterline, but is protected by that turtleback, which means you're going to have a really rough time citadeling the Gascon. So, armor, again, it's very French. 32, if you're running into a lot of light cruisers, especially how it is today with the Pan-Asian light cruisers just being released, you are going to eat a lot of pin damage from their HE spam. But when you get into those close range situations against other battleships, she is mostly well protected from her citadel shots. But I do also find too, even when I'm bow taking in this ship, because of again the amount of 32, when you run to those bigger gun battleships, they do find places on your hull to bite into and get some pins as well. So the armor overall I would rate it as fairly decent, especially when you do get into those close range situations. But again, you're going to need a lot of HE damage. Now, her survivability, she has 63,200 hit points and a 35% torpedo damage reduction rate. Now, her main guns, which is probably the biggest disappointment on the ship. So, she gets 2x4 of the 15-inch French guns, just like the Richelieu does. They have a reload time of 28 seconds base, a 180 turn time with Mr. Henri on my Gascon, at 28.8 seconds with his improved grease the gear skill, so that's very nice, especially if you do have him. And here's the big kicker, a maximum dispersion of 278 meters. That's not so good. Now, she does have 1.9 Sigma, which sometimes makes up for this. But this dispersion not only is a maximum dispersion of 278 meters, she has the old German battleship dispersion. Now, why is that a bad thing? Well, if you are a fairly new player, the German battleship dispersions were, well, the ellipses were changed to be the same as the American battleships, to where it was more reined in. The old German battleship dispersion was quite terrible. And I mean, this is like absolute shotgun levels of dispersion. What does keep it in check here at the Gascon is that 1.9 Sigma. But she still has one of the worst dispersions of any Tier 8 battleship. And that's attempted to be rectified with a 28-second reload time on your 8 18-inch guns. I'm sorry, 8 15-inch guns. I wish they were 18-inch guns. Which means you get some truly frustrating salvos with this ship, and as I'm sure you'll see in the background too. Now, this ship does of course have the French AP, which is some very hard-hitting, very fast-moving AP. It's wonderful when you run to other meaty targets that you can really sink your teeth into, like other battleships, which you do see that happen here in the footage you're watching in the background. When it does connect, it does hurt. But the thing is, getting it to connect is incredibly frustrating. Now, do keep in mind, too, of course, in today's meta, especially at high tier, you are engaging at fairly long ranges. And the ship does have a pretty nice base range at 23.8 kilometers, and you can take spotter if for some reason you want to shoot that much further, which I wouldn't really recommend with the dispersion, but you can do that. So she does actually have fairly good range for being a tier 8 battleship, but again, hitting stuff at that range isn't going to be that fantastic either. Now, her HE, maximum damage of 5,400, 36% chance of causing a fire on target, and you can pin 63 millimeters of armor, and it comes out the tubes at 830 meters a second. It's not really fantastic HE considering you only have 8 guns, and then you have the dispersion that you have on these ships, on this ship, and then only a 36% chance of causing a fire. And do keep in mind too, a lot of times when you're in HE spamming situations in battleships, you're bow to bow with an enemy battleship, and now you only have 4 guns with absolutely terrible dispersion. So yeah. The AP does a maximum damage of 11,900, by the way, if I forgot to mention that. So it's kind of like the Roma, where you have incredibly hard-hitting AP, but you will get some really frustrating shots trying to get it to work. And just like the Roma 2, a lot of times when you do finally manage to hit whatever it is you're shooting at, you're going to overpin them. Unless it's a battleship showing you like completely flat broadside, you're going to overpin them, especially with cruisers. Now, of course, if the cruiser's angled into you and the AP bites, it's going to hurt them very, 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 very much so. But that doesn't happen a lot. It doesn't. And unlike the Roma, you only have 4 guns in the front of your ship. The Roma gets 6 in the front, so when you are angled bow in, you at least have 6 shells to throw at the enemy team. With the Gascon, you only have 4. And this is where the main frustration comes in too. Now, since the turret number 2 got moved to the rear, you also have terrible forward firing angles, which means you have to show your broadside a lot if you want to get all 8 of your guns on target, which with the dispersion, you really want to do that as much as you possibly can, because if you're just firing with the 1 turret in the front, you're only firing 4 shells, and you're not really going to hit much with that. And this is where the biggest letdown of the ship is, in my opinion. Everything else that we're about to go over after this section is actually pretty good, except for the A. Like the ship's maneuverability, the speed, the concealment. It's all fairly decent. If these guns were a little bit better, this would have actually been a really freaking good premium. And what would have taken, in my opinion, for this ship to be a really good premium is just lowering that reload time from 28 seconds to like 25, and put it on the same par as the other 8 15-inch gun tier 8 ships like the Tirpitz and the Bismarck. If you would have done that, even with the dispersion that the Gascon has, this would have been a really good premium ship. But they didn't. And you're stuck here a lot of times just feeling like it's taking forever for your guns to load, especially for the small amount of guns that you carry and the dispersion that you have. You're sitting there, you're like, oh my god, why aren't my guns loaded already? You know, if I was in the Tirpitz or the Bismarck or any other 8-gun battleship this high up in the tiers, my guns would have been loaded already, but they're not. So that's one of the main points of frustration. You miss a lot, you have a long reload time for the amount of guns that you have, and your dispersion's terrible. Okay, so the AA, she lost quite a bit of AA with, well, the planned ship in real life lost a bit of AA, and this is reflected as well in Warships. Her A rating is 63. Now, the Richelieu has pretty decent AA. I mean, it's not like an AA god, but it has decent AA. Most CVs will ignore you. Not the case here with the Gascon. So, premium with terrible AA is hardly anything new. Maneuverability is one of the ship's absolute highlights. With a speed flag equipped, you can go 33.6 knots. You have a turning circle radius of 850 meters and a rush up time of 15.3 seconds. And she does get the French speed boost too. So you can be a properly fast battleship with the speed boost and the speed flag equipped like the other French battleships. And this is what French battleships do. They find a flank, speed boost down it, get on the side of the enemy team, start throwing their good AP into the sides of the enemy ships. Concealment, she's not the best, not the worst. 13.2 kilometers with the module and the commander skill. That's fairly decent. I mean, by tier 8 standards, you're no stealth boat, but you certainly no Amagi either. It's not great, not terrible. Now that brings us to the ship's consumables. So like I said, she does have the engine boost, the French engine boost. You get an 8% boost to your engine for 180 seconds. Reloads at 114 seconds. You get 3 charges of that. You do have a choice between fighter and spotter. I take fighter because of your lackluster AA. And then you get to the heel, which is another highlight of the Richelieu. I'm sorry, of the Gascon. So the ship's repair party, it repairs 379 HP per second. It's active for 30.8 seconds, and it reloads with the flag and the commander skill in 38 seconds. That's great. That's a nice, fast reloading repair party, which kind of makes up for the lackluster armor. Well, not really lackluster armor, but for the 32 millimeters everywhere armor, it kind of makes up for that. And it does help you when playing the Gascon, because you really do have to put yourself in harm's way a lot of times to do well in the ship, either to close the gap, to make sure that your shells actually hit what you're aiming for, or a lot of times in Tier 8, just the way the Tier 8 matches go, you can't really sit in the back, you need to be a little bit closer. This does most certainly help make up for that. But unfortunately, just the incredible frustration you get out of the guns on the Gascon, it's just so frustrating to play. Like, this ship is so close to being a good BB. If they would buff it, which I doubt they'll do, it's been 4 years, you barely see these Gascons in matches. And the 4 or 5 matches I played to get so freaking decent match that you're watching in the background right now, I did not run to another Gascon. And the way matchmaking is supposed to work, it's supposed to match you up ideally with your twin ship on the other side. So when you play a ship, you have a much more higher chance of running into it, but no one really plays Gascon because, again, it's been out for 4 years. It's a terrible ship because of the guns, which is really sad because it's so close to being such a nice little Tier 8 premium battleship, but the guns are too frustrating, and you have to put yourself in so much danger to get these guns working because of the terrible firing angles and the terrible reload time and the terrible dispersion that it unfortunately just falls flat. So if you ever get this ship offered to you in a sale or whatever, I'd hard pass on it. If you pick it up in a premium, premium container that you might get from like the Santa event or whatever event's going on, it'd be some nice port decoration. It's kind of nice for operations. If they ever bring back that one French battleship operation, I can't remember the name of it, when you could bring the Gascon or the Richelieu, it'd be nice for that, for some farming. But other than that, absolutely not. It's not great for random battles. Absolutely not great for competitive at all. It's just, unfortunately, a ship that I guess it was stuck in development hell for some time. They just wanted to get it out for the French Battleship event, or near the time of the French Battleship event. But that's my 2 cents on the Gascon, and look back at the Gascon. Let me know what you guys think about the ship in the comments down below. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday. Have a wonderful week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.